Is my screen visible? Can anyone confirm, please?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So today what we are going to
Yes,
discuss,
sir.
yeah, 1 second. Let me remove all these things. Okay, today what we are going to discuss is about the installation of Docker. Installation of Docker. Okay, and we are going to see some of the architecture, Docker, Docker architecture, and we are going to see uh, technical terms in Docker actually. Okay. Okay, we are going to see this. Okay, these are the three things that we are going to see actually today. So first, installation of Docker. Let's go with that. Yesterday we have created a server with name test actually. I hope you people know this is the my server which I have created yesterday, is in yesterday's class. So how we created, we have created a first key pairs and we have used that key pairs in creating this server, right? So how to connect to this server? Click on this checkbox and click on this connect option. Just click on that and click on just connect. It is a common way for everyone who are using different operating system laptops. Also the same way you can connect. Okay, so now this is the server. This is a virtual machine I have logged in. Okay, this is a virtual machine I have logged in. Now how to, you need to switch to root user, sudo su hyphen, just execute this command. You will be switching to root user. Okay, now previously you are in normal user, that is Ubuntu user. You need to switch to root user in order to install Docker actually. Now clear the screen. Now clear the screen. Let me increase the font size so that, yeah. So this is how now I have collected the Docker commands to install the Docker. Just execute one by one. Okay, let me do that. Okay, so that it will be easy for you to install Docker. Just execute one by one.
Sir, each command have some meaning, like you're executing, right?
Yes, each command has some meaning. Everything is the installation of Docker. Just it's just an installation of
Okay.
the server. Yeah. These are all the Linux commands. Okay, so 1 second. Just install in this way. 1 second, let me complete it. Now you need to execute this. You need to see, actually Docker has been installed into this virtual machine or EC2 machine. So you need to see the status of the Docker, whether it is properly running on systemctl status Docker. Just click on that. You need to see this active and running state here. Active, in the active section you need to give it's in active or running state, so that you will be knowing that Docker is properly running. So the final command I need to execute is this one. Okay, this is how you need to install Docker. Now, you can execute the docker commands here. You can see docker images is one of the command. You can see no images from what is an image, what are all these things. Let's discuss. But you can execute docker commands when you install docker in this virtual machine. This is how you need to install docker. This is how you need to install docker. And you can proceed further with the installation of docker. Okay, now what is the architecture of docker? Okay, what is the architecture of docker? Now first we need, before discussing about the architecture, let's discuss about the technical terms that we use in docker. Okay, what are the technical terms that we use in docker? Let me put it here. Okay, now first technical term is docker image. Okay, docker image. Okay, docker image is nothing but a binary. Suppose it's kind of a binary in which your application will be present. Okay, suppose there is an image. Suppose there is an application called nginx. Nginx is an application. Normally to install nginx, you need to install nginx onto the virtual machine. But if you are using docker, you need to use docker image to install nginx application. So image is something called a binary. It's a static file in which your application will be present. Okay, image is a static file in which your application will be present. Image is a static or binary. When you run this image, an application will be running actually. So that is docker image. Where are these docker images? I will show you. Okay, image is a static or binary in which our applications will be present. Okay, this is how the image is. This is the docker image. Docker image is a binary in which our application will be present actually. This is the docker image. Now what is docker container? What is docker container? Let me put it here. Okay, now when you run this, there is an image where there is a docker image for nginx application. Nginx is an application from Apache. So when you run that nginx image, that turns as that turns as container. Generally, what is a container? If you see, if you search for a container, see images. Okay, this is the container in our regular life, right? This is the container in which our goods will be present, and it is used to ship goods from one place to another place. In the same way, in docker also, container means in which our application will be in running state. Okay, in the image, in the image, if you consider the docker image, that in the docker image our application will be there itself. Only it is not in running state, but it will be there. Okay, when you run this image, then our application comes to running state, so that you can request, you can send the traffic or the request to your application actually. And that is the docker container. Okay, when you run the docker image, that becomes docker container. Container means in which it's a running state of our application actually, in which our application will be in running state actually. Okay, or running image or application is called docker container. Container actually, this is the docker container. Okay, docker container means when you run a particular image, that becomes the docker container. Inside the image, my application will be there, but it is in not in running state. But inside the docker container, my application also will be there, but it will be in running state, so that it can serve the traffic. Okay, it can accept the traffic, but image cannot accept the traffic. When you run this image only, it container will be accepting the traffic only. So that's how it functions actually, docker image and docker container. The next terminology that you need to know is docker registry. Docker registry. Okay, Docker registry means to store these images. We have 100 different applications. Okay, we have, suppose, let's think we have 100 different applications. Okay, so for 100 different applications or microservices, we need 100 different images. Okay, people will be creating, industry will be creating 100 different images for different 100 different applications, so that they will be launching their applications on the servers as microservices, as Docker containers actually. So to store these images, we need some place, right? We need some place to store these images. So that place is called Docker registry. This is to store images actually. Images, this is to store, Docker registry is to store the images. Okay, now there are two types of Docker registries. One is public Docker registry, public docker docker registry actually, public Docker registry. And second one is private Docker registry, private Docker registry actually. What is the difference between these two? These two are meant for storing images only, but what is actual difference between these two types of registries? Public Docker registry is, if you store the image in public Docker registry, anyone in the world can able to download that Docker image in which our application is present, and anyone can be able to use that Docker image. Then that is the image. If you store the image in the public registry, anyone will be able to download. That is called public registry, public Docker registry. So it is accessible to everyone in the world. That is public registry. What is private registry is only your organization, or you only, or who, the people who has the access only can able to access this private registry, private Docker registry. That is private Docker registry. Examples of this public Docker registry are, let me tell you. Okay, Docker Hub. Okay, let me tell you, Docker Hub is belongs to public Docker registry. Examples: Docker Hub. And the examples of private Docker registry is the ECR in AWS. Okay, ECR. Okay, Elastic Container Registry is a full form. So this is the ECR where we store the Docker images. See, if you store the Docker images of our applications in private registry, only the people who has the access to that registry can only be accessing that images. Anyone else cannot be accessing. So that is a private Docker registry. But public Docker registry, anyone in the world can able to access. That is Docker Hub. Now if you I want to show you this also. So now there is a public Docker registry, hub.docker.com, hub.docker.com. Go to this. So yeah, now click on sign in. Click on sign in. You need to create an account. If you don't have, if you want to create an account, click on sign up. Okay, you need to give your details here and click on sign up, and then you can able to sign in actually. Then I have an account in this. Okay, now I want to continue. Let me continue. So this is my public Docker registry. See, in this, every like this all these Docker images can be able to accessible everyone in the world actually. If you click on explore, if you click on explore, or if you search for that. Okay, now search for Nginx. Now search for Nginx Docker image. Let's click on this. You can see this is the Nginx Docker image actually. Now you can use this Docker image. This is not created by me. This is created by Nginx people or Apache people, so that you can use this Nginx image in your local, like in your wherever you want. Okay, this you can download and you can use this Nginx image actually. What is an image? In which our application will be present, but it is in not in running state actually. That is the image. Okay, so that's the thing. Okay, now this is the public registry. You can store your images actually. So that's the thing. Okay, now that's a That's the registries actually. That is the meaning of Docker registries actually. Now let me tell you another terminology. Now that is Docker host. Okay, what is Docker host? Docker host is in which on the machine on which you installed Docker is called Docker host. The machine on which you installed Docker is called Docker host. Here in the EC2 virtual machine, we have installed Docker, right? So this virtual machine is called Docker host actually. That is Docker host. Okay, let me put it here. The machine on which installed Docker is called Docker host. Okay, that's the thing. Okay, so that's the thing, that is the Docker host. The next thing that you need to know is Docker daemon. Okay, Docker daemon actually. Okay, Docker daemon. What is Docker daemon? Okay, what is Docker daemon? So you can see it here. When you go to inside the Docker host, when you go inside the Docker host, this is my Docker host. Okay, now from today I will not be using virtual machine or VC2 server. Now from today I will be using Docker host term, okay, in order to explain that. Okay, so that's a Docker host. Now Docker daemon. What is Docker daemon? Now if you see systemctl status Docker. Okay, Docker systemctl status Docker, you can see it is in active and running state. That means Docker is in running state. This is like a background process that is running actually. So it's a daemon. What is the daemon in the operating system terminology? What is a daemon? A background process that is running is called daemon actually. So a background process, the Docker is running in the background where it can accept my Docker commands. You can see that when I am executing, one second, when I'm executing Docker images, some process is accepting this command. I'm trying to perform the action. Okay, whatever the like action I'm giving, whatever the request I'm sending. So some process backend, some process in this virtual machine, in this Docker host only, some process is accepting this request and processing this request actually. So that process which is accepting this request is called Docker daemon. Docker daemon is a process that will be running in the background and accepts our requested, like our request, like Docker images, Docker container ls, something like that. Okay, these are the commands. Okay, now that is a Docker daemon. A background process which is accepting our request is called Docker daemon. One second. A background process which is accepting our, okay, that's the thing. That's a Docker daemon that we call it as. So these are the terminologies that you need to know before proceeding with the Docker actually. Docker images, where it's a static or binary in which our application will be present, but it is in not in running state. Docker container in which our application will be present, but it is in running state. When you run the container, you need to use Docker image and run the Docker image, and it becomes the Docker container. So Docker registry, this is Docker registry is to store the Docker images. So there are two types of registries. One is public registry and other one is private registry. In the public registry, if you store the Docker image, that Docker image is accessible to everyone. And if you store the Docker image in private registry, that Docker image is only accessible to the one who has the access actually. What is Docker host? Docker host on which you install Docker, the machine on which you install Docker is called Docker host. What is Docker daemon? A background process which is accepting our request and performing the action is called Docker daemon. That's a technical terminologies that we are going to use in the Docker concepts actually. There are more, but Yeah, these are the initial things that you need to know before proceeding with the Docker actually. Okay, so any questions please you can ask.
Hello, sir. I understood all the parameter except the Docker image.
Yeah, Docker image is a binary. You will be understanding Docker image very well in when we are going to see use cases. I understand that Docker image is a binary. I mean to say, like, let's take an suppose this is our application in which there are many files in the application. Suppose this is a Python application or any application. Like, let's take an example of Python application a.py. There is a b.py file, okay, in this application. There is a c.py file, okay, in this application. All this work together, all these files, these are the all the Python's files, Python application files actually. d.py, okay, these are all the application files, okay. In order to this will be converted as Docker image in order to run this as a Docker container. Okay, now let me put as this one. You cannot, this is a code, right? You cannot directly put this code on the server, right? It will not be right feasible solution. You cannot run this code directly on a server. You need to convert this code as a binary. Suppose if you want to play any game, okay, if you want to play any game from the internet, what you will do, you will be downloading that something called exe file or the executable file, okay. You will double click that game and that game will be in running state. You can play that game when you double click that button, right? That icon, I mean to say. So that downloaded file is called Docker image here, but as an example I'm saying. So that's a Docker image. Now this application is converted as Docker image, and when you run this Docker image, uh, that will become a Docker container. This is the Docker container.
So that is application is converting into binary, then it is running to Docker.
Yeah, yes.
And so you mentioned like static means static, that word, we cannot change the code, or why they are calling statics?
Static means if you cannot change the code in the Docker image. Whenever you want to change the code, you need to create a new Docker image only. You should not, you cannot change the existing Docker image. That's a
Okay.
why we are calling static. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's
Sir,
the,
what about that?
yeah, tell me.
Yeah, you mentioned private Docker registry.
Mhm.
So is it accessible to only few authorized users, right?
Yes,
What
yes.
kind of authorization we required?
What kind of authorization required? If I have told the example of ECR, right? ECR is a
Yes.
service of AWS actually. ECR is a service of AWS. In the AWS, we have service name called IAM, Identity Access and Access Management. Okay, you can create multiple users in one AWS account. Let me show you. If you go to the AWS account, if you search for IAM is a service. Okay, in the left hand menu, you can see the users here. You can create multiple users who can access this account, okay, who can access this account actually. Now when you create this user, okay, I have created this my user actually. In the case of permissions, have given only some permissions only. You can see these are the permissions I have given to this user which I have created in this account actually. So only this user will be having only this permissions. This user is called IAM user. If you give the IAM permissions like ECR permissions to this user, then this user will be able to access. If the IAM users will be able to access the ECR registry, private registry in case of AWS actually. So that's the people who has the access to AWS account and who has the access to the ECR registry only will be able to access that ECR registry. Let me show you that ECR as well. So this is ECR, Elastic Container Registry. So this is the private registry where you can create the registries actually. That's the thing. Okay. Is that okay? Yeah. So that's the thing actually. Now let's go further actually. So um one second. What's the next concept that you need to go is the like Docker architecture. What is Docker architecture that we follow in here actually? So when you are executing some commands, let me execute the commands. Okay, clear the screen. Okay, docker images, you are executing this command and you are getting the output. From where you are getting this output, actually how the internal functionality of this Docker, like how it is internally functioning. Okay, now that's what we need to we will be understanding in Docker architecture actually. So let's go to here and let me put it here. Okay, one more terminology is I have missed actually. So the other terminology I have to mention to you, sorry for that, is Docker client. Okay, Docker client actually. So in the case of Docker client, what is the Docker client is from where you are executing the Docker. You can see I'm executing the Docker commands from this terminal. This is the terminal of what's the terminal. Terminal is a command prompt. In case of Windows, we will call as command prompt, or terminal. In case of Linux or like Mac operating system, we'll call it as terminal. Okay, Docker images, I'm executing the commands from the terminal or command prompt. Okay, that command from where you are executing the Docker commands is called Docker client. Okay, actually my terminal is acting as a Docker client here. Okay, that's the thing. Okay, here the place from
Sir,
where,
wherever we executing the client, we are hosting the Docker there only, right? So
yeah,
can
yeah.
we call both same?
Yes. Here, the my Docker. See here, suppose we have created a EC2 machine. Okay, we have created a Docker host in which I have installed Docker. Okay, in which I have installed Docker, and in this Docker host, I have also have terminal. Here in this case, my Docker host is called like this is the Docker. Like my Docker host is called both actually. My Docker host is called Docker daemon. Like this is a Docker daemon which is running inside the Docker host. Okay, this is a Docker daemon. Okay, Docker daemon. This is a Docker daemon which is running, and there is a Docker client also. This is a terminal. Okay, this is a terminal that is called Docker client. In this in our case which we install Docker, my Docker daemon and the Docker client are in the same machine, that is Docker host actually. That is the thing actually. That's how we follow. Okay, the terminal that is called Docker client and the Docker daemon are on the same machine, that is called Docker host. Okay, that's the thing. Okay, then we call it as both actually. So that's how we call it as. Okay, okay, the place from where we we execute the Docker commands is called Docker client. Okay, that's a Docker client. Okay, let me remove this. Okay, that is a Docker client. Now, so now here, let me put the Docker architecture. Okay, let me put the Docker architecture here. So in case of Docker architecture, what we'll having, we have different components in the Docker architecture. One component is called Docker client actually. One component is called, first component that we have is called Docker client. Okay, Docker client. Okay, this is the Docker client. Other component that we have is like this one. Okay, let me put this one. Okay, this is the Docker host, but in our case the Docker client and Docker host are like Docker client is part of the Docker host, but let's separate it so that you will be understanding the Docker architecture very well. Okay, so that, yeah, this is the Docker host. Docker host, this is a Docker host. Okay, so this is a Docker host in which my Docker daemon is running. Okay, one second, in which a Docker daemon is running. Okay, let me put like this. Okay, this is my Docker client and this is my Docker host in which my Docker daemon is running. And let me put another thing. This is the Docker registry. This is the Docker registry hub.docker.com, or this is a public Docker registry. Let's consider. Okay, this is the Docker registry. 1 second. Okay, now this Docker registry consists of multiple images. Actually, let me put multiple images here. Okay, this consists of hundreds of images, thousands of images. Okay, Nginx. Okay, let me put Tomcat, BusyBox, MySQL. This contains MongoDB. This contains WordPress. So like that, hundreds of images will be present in case of Docker registry actually. So let me put like this. Okay, these are the images that are present. Let's consider these are the images as of now. These are the images, Docker images, I mean to say, present in the Docker registry actually. Now you are executing what you are executing here, Docker images. What is the meaning of this command? Meaning of this command is list the what are the present, like Docker images present on your machine actually. What are the Docker images present on your Docker host actually? That is this command, to list all the Docker images present on the Docker host. That is using this command. Okay, as of now there are no Docker images. Okay, Docker images on my Docker host. That is why it is not listing any image. Okay, because we have installed for the first time. That is why it is not showing any Docker images. Now when you are executing this command, Docker images, what it internally happening is, let me put it here. Okay, when you execute Docker images, what it is happening is, this request from the Docker client is listening by the Docker daemon. Okay, you have seen systemctl status Docker, that means it is in running state. Okay, now when you request like Docker images, when you execute this command Docker images, so that request is listening, request is listening by the Docker daemon and listening by the Docker daemon. Now in this Docker daemon will debug this request actually. What the user want to perform actually, he want to list Docker images present on the Docker host. Now it will see the Docker images present on the Docker host. Okay, it will see the Docker images present on the Docker host. It will find there are no Docker images present on the Docker host, and it will give this empty option, this empty output actually. That is, there is no Docker images present on the Docker host actually. That's how it performs. Okay, now when you now how to pull a particular Docker image from hub.docker.com. Now docker pull actually, Docker pull is the command to pull Docker images, to pull Docker image from the hub.docker.com. I want to pull Nginx image. Okay, let me put Nginx. Okay, I want to pull Nginx Docker image to my Docker host. Let me pull this. Okay, now it is trying to pull, it is downloading the image from the hub.docker.com. It has been downloaded. Now you can see Docker images. You can see this is the image that it got downloaded. Now what it is happening when you execute Docker pull Nginx, what it internally happening? Now let me put it here. Docker pull in 1 second. Nginx actually, when you execute this Docker pull Nginx command, this request is listened by Docker daemon. This request is listened by Docker daemon, and this Docker daemon will be debugging, like it will be like breaking down this request, what the user want to perform in this request. He want to pull Nginx image actually, he want to pull the Nginx image. Now first Docker daemon checks in the local on the Docker host whether the Nginx image is really present or not on the Docker host. If the Nginx image is already present on the Docker host, then Docker daemon will not perform, like it will show that image, but it will not again download the Nginx image. But if the Docker like if the Nginx image is not present on the Docker host, now what the Docker daemon does is Docker daemon connect to the Docker registry, Docker daemon connect to the Docker registry and download the Nginx image and download the Nginx image to the Docker hub actually, or Docker host actually, that will download the Docker daemon will download Nginx image to the Docker host actually. That how it functions. Now when you execute docker pull nginx, it will first check whether the Docker image is present on the Docker host or not. If it is not present, then that Docker daemon will be downloading that image, that will be connecting to the Docker registry and downloading that nginx image onto the Docker host actually. That how it functions. What is docker pull nginx? It want to the meaning of this is you need to the what is the when you execute this command, the Docker daemon will understand the user want to download the nginx image, that is docker pull. That means pull means download nginx image actually. That's how it functions. That's how it functions. Now let's execute, let's run this Docker image that we downloaded. Let's run this Docker image that we downloaded. Okay, how to run this Docker image that we downloaded? This is how you need to run. Now you can see Docker images. I have downloaded the nginx image from the hub.docker.com. And how to run this Docker image is, see, when you run this Docker image, that will become Docker container. Now let me run this Docker run, and I want to run this image. I want to put -d. What is -d? I will explain, but as of now, just concentrate on running the Docker image. Now in nginx, okay, this is how you need to run actually. Now docker container is been executing. How to see the running Docker containers is Docker container ls is the command. You can see the Docker container with the image. What's the image of the Docker container is nginx. With the help of nginx only we have executed with the, see, Docker run. I want to run the Docker image. What's the image? Nginx. That's the meaning of this command. Now what it does, it will be this command does is it will run nginx image as a container actually. Now when you run this Docker image as a container and list the running containers, Docker container ls, and it will list, this command will list all the running containers on my Docker host actually. You can see this is the, whenever you create any container, a container ID will be automatically created. This is the container ID that we call it as. And what is the image that you need, that you are using in this container is the nginx image. Okay, this is the command that will be understanding this in case of creating custom Docker images. What is entry point, something like that, that's we'll understanding there. Now when it is created 15 seconds ago, and it is up, it is in running state from past 15 seconds ago. What is this ports, and this, and we will see what is the port, we will see. And name of this container is this one. It is automatically giving the name of, for this container actually, the Docker will be automatically giving the name if we don't explicitly specify the name actually. No, this we did not explicitly specify the name in this command, right? That is why the Docker daemon automatically gives some name actually. Whatever the name it is, it will be giving some name actually. So that's how we will be running Docker image as a container. Now what is happening internally when you run this Docker image as a container? Let's go and see in the Docker architecture. Now what the command you executed here, let me put it here, Docker run -d nginx. You have executed this command actually, Docker run -d nginx is the command that we have executed, let me put in this way. So when you run this command, what internally happening is this command is listened by docker daemon. Okay, this command is listened by docker daemon, and docker daemon sees, like, docker daemon checks whether this nginx image that the user want to run as a container is present on the docker host or not, whether it is present on the docker host or not. If this nginx image is present on the docker host, that will run that image as a container on the docker host, that will run that this image as a container. Docker daemon will be running this image as a container on the docker host. If the image is not there on the docker host, now what it will do when you are running this docker run -d nginx, if the image is not there, it will first download the image from the hub.docker.com, that is docker registry, and run as a container on the docker host. Actually, that's how it functions. Actually, this is the container, nginx container, nginx. This is the nginx container. Okay, so that's a architecture of docker. Actually, we have different components in the architecture of docker client, from where we are executing docker commands, and docker daemon, which is listening our requests from the docker client, and the docker host, where we install docker and running our docker containers, and docker registry, where our images are stored. Actually, this is how the internally it performs. Actually, if you want to run another container, now what are the images present here? Docker images. Okay, docker images, only nginx docker image present on my docker host. Now I want to run tomcat as a container. Now tomcat is not present on my docker host. Tomcat image is not present on my docker host, not on my docker host, but I want to run it. How to run? Okay, docker run -d. I am giving tomcat actually. So you can see unable to find the image locally. If the image is not found locally on that means on the docker host, it will download the image from the hub.docker.com. If you see now what we have executed here in the docker client, docker run -d tomcat, we have executed this command, right? What is happened in this command? When you execute this command is listened by docker daemon. This command is listened by docker daemon, and docker daemon has been checking whether the nginx or tomcat image is present on the docker host or not. It did not find the tomcat image on the docker host, and it connected, this docker daemon connected to the docker registry and downloaded the tomcat image, and run and executed the tomcat image as a container. Actually, this is a tomcat container. Let me put here 1 second. This is the tomcat container. Okay, this is a tomcat container. If the image is not present on the docker host, it will download the image and execute as a container. If the image is already present on the docker host, then it will use the existing image. Docker daemon will be using the existing image to run as a container. That's what I mean to say. Okay, now you can see the container is in running state. It has been status downloaded image and tomcat latest. Now you can see docker container ls. Okay, this is the command from which you can list all the containers. You can see these are the two different containers that I have executed. One is tomcat with the help of tomcat image, and other one is with the help of nginx image. Now you can see previously let me show you. Okay, docker images, you can see previously when you execute docker images at this section, you did not we did not have tomcat image. Now after running this docker run tomcat here, docker run tomcat here, it is automatically downloaded the image. And again, if you execute docker images, you see that the docker image has been downloaded. You can see this is a tomcat image that is downloaded, because it is, we want to run that image as a container, and it did not like it did not exist on my docker host. Actually, if that image does not exist on my docker host, and if you want to run that as a container, that image will be downloaded from the docker registry and executed as a container on my docker host actually. So that's how it functions. Okay, this is the architecture of the docker actually. Any questions you have, please you can ask the questions if you have.
Hello.
Yeah.
Sir, you mentioned Docker is in running state, right? Docker is in running state means whatever the application is present in our local host, is that running state means?
Yes, running state means whatever the application, that means docker application that is present on my machine, or the EC2 machine or the virtual machine is in running state. That's the meaning. Yes.
Oh. Okay, sir.
Yeah. Is that understandable, or shall I explain one more time? Be clear with this actually. What do people say?
Sir, Docker daemon, can you see the Docker daemon, sir, or internally it will be there, sir, actually, Docker daemon?
Daemon is the meaning like internal process that is running. What is the meaning of daemon? It's an internal process. It is
Okay,
backend
sir.
that is running actually, which will accept the Docker
Mm.
command. That's a daemon.
Okay, sir, whatever we execute in the client. Okay, sir.
See, if you are not available to ask questions, please put your questions in chat also, no problem. I can see that. Is that okay, or shall I explain one more time? Anyone please comment?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Your voice is broken. Someone please. Hello. Okay. If no questions, let's move further, and yeah, let's move further actually. Now, suppose you want to what's the time? Okay, 8:53. Okay. Now let me, how to stop this running container, how to stop this is the in running state. Actually, docker container is in running state. How to stop this running container? This, let me clear the screen. Docker container ls, these are the two containers that is in running state. Actually, you can see what, how you can see, okay, how you can say that is in running state. If you see the up status, that means it is in running state. Okay, if you see the up status, that means it is in running state. How to stop the docker container is using copy this container id. This is a container id, it's important. This is a container id. Copy this container id, and how you can use docker stop, and this is put the container id. You can see this container has been stopped. Actually, how to stop this? You can execute this command, docker stop container id, to stop docker container. Now if you see docker images, okay, docker images actually, sorry, docker containers, right? Sorry, docker containers. Okay, container, you can see only one container is in running state. Now the other container, the nginx container, we have stopped. Only tomcat container is in running state. Now how to list all the stopped and running containers is, you can see docker container ls -a is the command. Docker container ls -a is the command to list all the stopped and running containers. You can see this is a nginx container which has been stopped, and this is a tomcat container which has been executing, which has been running state, and this is a stopped state actually. Now how to remove entirely? It's just in stopped state. How to remove entirely contain, and to how to delete this container. How to delete is docker rm is the command to delete this command, this delete this stopped container. See, this is how you need to delete. Now if you list again docker container ls hyphen a. What is this meaning? Docker container ls is hyphen a. This command will list all the stopped and running containers. Now you can see previously when you executed this command, it shown one container is in running state, that is tomcat, and other container is in stopped state, that is nginx. But now if you see, now after this execution of this command, what we have did, we have removed entirely the nginx container which is stopped state also. Now how to, when you check this docker container ls-a, now that nginx image, that the nginx container which is in stopped state will not be present, because we deleted entirely from the docker host. That container is been deleted entirely from the docker host actually. That's how we need to stop and start docker containers actually. So that's how you need to do it. And now how to remove the running containers, how to remove the running containers. We have removed here the stopped container using docker rm command, but how to remove the running containers is using like this: docker rm hyphen f is the command with the container id. Hyphen f represents the force, hyphen f represents force, hyphen f represents force actually. So just execute this command. This will remove the running container actually. If you do not use this hyphen f force, you are going to get an error. Let me show that error also. Docker now if you check container ls, you can see no containers are been running, and no containers are been in running state, a stopped state also. Now if you, I want to run a container with again tomcat, and I want to show if you stop that container without like, if you want to remove that container without stopping it. Now you can see docker container ls, you can see it is in running state. Nginx image just I have executed, it is in nginx image, and nginx container is in running state. Now this container is in running state, I want to remove this container without hyphen f or without stopping. Now docker rm, and this is a container id, and you are going to get an error. You can see response from daemon, you are getting the response from daemon. You cannot remove running container and stop the container before attempting removal or use force to remove. Okay, that's how you are getting, you are going to get an error. Only you can remove stopped containers only using docker rm command. If you want to remove running containers, you need to use docker rm hyphen f. Hyphen f represents force. Okay, that's how you need to remove. How you need to remove? Docker rm hyphen f is the command that you need to use with the, along with the container id. You need to paste this container id. Now this is the, this is how you need to do. Now docker container ls, you can see no containers are in running state, no containers are in running state actually. Now that's how you need to execute this. Okay, that's how you need to do this actually. So today what we have seen, we have seen installation of docker, how to install, and this will be provided as a document to you, so that you can also install, follow the same step. You just execute the same commands, uh, that will install the docker architecture. We have seen technical terms that we have used in the docker, and some of the docker commands we have seen. And yeah, how when you execute docker commands, how internally the function will be, how the internally the docker daemon will listen that docker image, the docker request that we are performing, that we have seen. And yeah, different things we have seen today. And we do, tomorrow what we are going to see is some of the other docker commands. There are multiple docker commands that we need to go through, and we need to go through some of the use cases while going into the further actually, where we need to where we need to uh, run nginx image as a docker container and access the nginx frame image, the nginx application from our web browser, how to do that, and how to establish a communication between two different containers. One container has to establish has to communicate with the other container. Such kind of use cases, interesting use cases, that we are going to see in the future classes or tomorrow. Okay, so yeah, that's how. If you have any questions, you can ask, please.
Hello.
Yeah.
So Docker
Yeah, tell me.
So, generally, like why we run those containers, sir? Running, stopping, like that we are doing, right? Yeah. What like why we are running container? Like after running, what we are checking there, like.
That that's what I'm saying. After running the container, you are going to tomorrow. You are going to see the use case. After running the container, you are able to. You will be able to access the application from the web browser from here, from your local laptop or from your Chrome browser. If the internet is proper for you, you will be able to access the browser like application from here. Let me. If you
Okay,
want
sir. Thank you.
Docker run -p, that's what I did not mention as of now. That's what I can. 80 nginx. Let me run this container. Okay, now let me copy the public IP address of the machine. So all these things are there. That is not actually, it is time today, that's why. See, you are able to access the application from the your browser. Actually, that's how we are going to see the use case actually tomorrow. What is -p, how you can access the application from the web browser like this. What is -p, what is 80:80 that we are going to do. These are all the use cases where you will be like where you will getting the use of this is by debugging the applications. You are running the Docker containers as in the real time. Okay, so like if the application is not running inside the host, while you want to perform debugging, like you need to check by logging into the host whether the actual container is running or not properly. What is the issue that we are facing with that container, and how to solve that issue, whether it is application issue or the infrastructure side issue. So such kind of knowledge you will get. So you need to know all these things actually. So that's the thing.
So will you provide that all the list of commands
Yes, I will.
and
Yes, yes,
and the video?
okay, someone asked something again. Who is that? Can you unmute yourself and ask?
Yes, sir, we are stopping the container by stop, right, command.
Yeah.
So if you want to resume that, can we use start?
Yes, you can use start. Okay, Docker start the container ID.
Okay. Can you stop all containers at a time, sir?
Yes, you have some command. You have some command. Docker something like that. I will be showing that. All the containers. If you have 100 containers, you can stop all the 100 containers at a time.
And -A is nothing but a listing of stopped containers, right? Which you mentioned.
Stopped and running containers both actually. Both, it will show both. -A means all.
Then what is the difference between ls and ls-a?
Yeah, only ls will show only running containers, but ls
Okay.
is -a will show stopped and running containers. Both containers it will show. Yes. Okay. Yeah, if you have any questions, you can ask, or if you don't have, please go ahead and register for the course, and we'll meet tomorrow. Okay. Thank you.